Hello everyone and welcome back to our Soap Making for Beginners mini-series. We are on the final day of the mini-series today, day number 7. If you haven't seen days 1 to 6, you can check out the videos here. I shall link to the first video in the series here for you guys to see. And yeah, we have just been running through a guide on soap making for absolute beginners. So we have covered things like lye, we have covered terminology, we have covered oils, and in the previous 2 days we have actually made soaps. On day 5 we made a very simple 1 colour bar of soap just topped with a few flowers, and yesterday we made a 2 colour layered soap. Today we are showing you how to make a swirled soap using the in the pot swirl technique. It is a great swirl technique. It is one of the easier swirls, and it is a swirl that I personally really enjoy doing, which is why I've chosen it to kind of teach to you guys and show you guys today. If you've been watching our other videos, you will be getting the hang of what we need to do now. We need to clean down our work surfaces. We need to pop on our safety gear, our gloves, goggles, long sleeves, closed-toe shoes. And I say, if you've been watching the other videos, you will know the drill now. We have got our recipe printed out. I suggest you also have your recipe printed out. The recipe will be in the description. It is the same recipe that we have used for our previous 2 days worth of videos. The only difference is we have changed the smell and we have changed the colour. Other than that, it's the same base oils, it's the same amount of lye, it's the same amount of water. So we thought we'd keep it nice and easy for the beginners recipes. And that is everything. So let's move on and make our 3rd and final soap, the In the Pot Swirl design with a textured top and some flower petals. So for our final soap, we are preparing the oils and the lye in exactly the same way that we have prepared the previous 2 days worth of soap. And I have again got my recipe printed out just off to the side of me for reference. So we're going to begin, as we did before, with our coconut oil, and we want 200 grams of coconut oil weighed into our pan. There we go, 200 grams of coconut oil weighed. So we're going to pop this to the side for melting later on. Then we are going to weigh out our olive oil and our castor oil. So we now want to weigh out 40 grams of castor oil. And now we are going to add in 540 grams of olive oil. And as I said in yesterday's video, if you want to weigh the olive oil into a separate jug and then combine it with the castor oil after you have weighed it to the correct amount, then that is absolutely fine. I'm only mixing them together because I am fairly confident with my oil amounts, and I am pretty confident that I can get the correct amount weighed out without going over and needing to take any out. And there we are at 560 grams of olive oil. And now I'm going to pop this down next to me, and we are going to weigh out our mica for today's swirl design. So today we are going to go for a pink swirl in our soap. So we are using the colour Burlesque from Resonate. You can use whatever colour you want. It is completely down to personal choice and personal preference. And you will want 1 gram of mica powder weighed out into your little mixing pot. Once you've got 1 gram weighed out, take a teaspoon measure and just take a teaspoon of your castor and olive oil and mix it in with the pink, or whatever colour you choose, mica powder. You can use a little sort of lolly stick to combine the mica with the oil, and we are combining it with oil because that means that when we add it to our soap batter later, it will disperse a little bit easier than if we were not mixing it with oil beforehand. So just mix it in nicely with the oil, and then it can be put to one side for use later on. Now we want to measure out our smell. And today we've decided to go with a fragrance oil. The last 2 days we've done essential oil soaps. Today we're going to do a fragrance oil one to show you there is not a whole lot of difference. we are going with the Rocking the Stars fragrance oil, which we purchased here in the UK from Sells the Smells. We are using the fragrance oil at a rate of 3% today, and that is 24 grams. When using fragrance oils, you want to check the IFRA documents, which you can find online generally from the company that you purchased from, and that will tell you how much of the fragrance oil can be used in soap. It is only a guideline, and if you are in the EU or the UK, you will find that you can't use above 3% in soaps anyway. So even if this one said it was suitable for use in soap at 20-30%, here in the UK we could still only use 3% if we were making soaps to sell. So we are going with the 3% maximum usage, which is 24 grams, and I am measuring it down the chopstick because it just keeps things a little bit neater and tidier. The oil doesn't tend to kind of spill or run away too badly when you're going down a chopstick. So that is quite full, and I'm just going to move it to one side next to my colour so that we can use that in our soap later. Now we need to prepare our lye. What has happened to that screen? That has gone very, very blurry. So now I'm going to prepare my lye, and just to reiterate, I have got my gloves, my long sleeves, my goggles and my closed-toed shoes all on. Safety precautions are very important, as I have covered many times in these videos when using lye, and we want 110.5 grams of lye measured into this bowl. And that is 110.5 grams. And that is what 110.5 grams of lye looks like. We're going to pop this to one side now, and then we are going to measure out the water that we need to add the lye into. So because we have got 110.5 grams of lye, we need 221 grams of water, because we are using a water to lye ratio of 2:1 in these beginner recipes. So I'm going to weigh out 221 grams of water. There we go, 221 grams there. And now I'm going to take this over to my sink. I'm going to turn on my extractor fan, open my window, and I'm going to prepare my lye solution in line with how I showed you in the video on day 2 on lye and lye safety. So if you need a recap, head on over. I will link the video for you, and you can head on over and just watch that to get a recap of how to make the lye solution. And again, for today's recipe, we want a temperature of around about 115 degrees Fahrenheit on our lye solution. So a few degrees, you know, a couple of degrees either side doesn't make much of a difference, but aim for around about 115 degrees Fahrenheit today. And while our lye is cooling, I'm going to also pop our coconut oil onto the heat and just allow it to gently melt. We are popping it onto a low heat, and as soon as it is melted we shall be taking it off the heat because we don't want it getting too hot. So our lye is still cooling, and we have melted the coconut oil, and now we are going to add in the castor oil and the olive oil that we weighed out earlier. Just pouring it carefully into the melted coconut oil, scraping out the jug, making sure that as much oil as possible is out of the jug and into the pan. And once it is all in, we are mixing it to combine with a spatula, and we are taking the temperature. And we are at 83 degrees Fahrenheit. So we are now going to pop this back onto our oven hob and just slowly bring it up in temperature until we are at around 115 degrees Fahrenheit. So we have brought our oils up in temperature, and we are now at 113.7 Fahrenheit. So that is a good temperature to have our oils at. And we shall bring in our lye now, and we will check the temperature, and we can see that that is spot on at 115 degrees Fahrenheit. So perfect, it is time to combine our lye and our oils. So when your lye and your oils are at temperature, it is time to slowly add your lye water into your oils. Just be obviously careful when you are doing this. You don't want it splashing up, so do it nice and slow. And And then you want to bring in your stick blender if you are using a stick blender, or a whisk if you are trying to hand whisk it. And for today's design, our swirl design, we want a kind of light to medium trace. So we are going to stir and pulse and do a combination of stirring and pulsing with the blender until we get to a light to medium trace. In the previous two videos I have shown you that in real time. We are on day 3 now, video number 3, so I'm actually going to speed the process up for you now because you've seen it twice if you've watched our previous videos, and I think you've probably got the hang of what's going on now, so we'll just speed up this part this time for you. So we are at a light trace now, and by the time we finish adding in fragrance and colour, the trace will have thickened slightly. So I think we are where we need to be for an in the pot swirl. For an in the pot swirl, you don't want a trace that is too thin, or the swirl or the colours will muddy together, but you don't want it too thick or they won't mix. So what we are doing first off is adding in our fragrance oil. Again, you do not have to add in a fragrance oil or an essential oil, you can leave it unscented. For an in the pot swirl, you want to make sure that you are using a fragrance oil or an essential oil that you have tested and that you know does not accelerate your trace, because if you are using a fragrance oil or an essential oil that accelerates trace, you're going to have a tough time creating an in the pot swirl. We know that this fragrance oil does not accelerate trace. And now we want to split off roughly 1/3 of this batter, and that is very roughly going to be about 400 grams of batter. You don't have to weigh it, but I am going to today. So I'm just going for roughly 400 grams. It's actually slightly under 400 if I want to be precise, but honestly 400 will be fine. In fact, I've gone slightly over, I'm at 428, but honestly, it doesn't matter. You do not have to be precise with the in the pot swirl. And this is where we add in our colour that we prepared earlier. So just get as much of it as you can out of your little mixing pot. You will not get it all out. There will be some that sticks to the sides. There always is. But just get as much as possible scraped out and into your batter. Now I'm just going to use a spatula to mix the colour in, and it is blending in really nicely because we mixed it with that oil to begin with. If we hadn't pre-mixed it with the oil, it wouldn't be dispersing and blending in as nicely as it is. And as you can see, we've got a very nice sort of rosy pink colour, which is great because we will be decorating with rose petals today as well, which is why I went for this really pretty rose pink mica. And we have got quite a nice trace here for an in the pot swirl. This is kind of how we like it to be for an in the pot swirl. You could go slightly thicker, I wouldn't go any thinner, but slightly thicker would work as well. But I am happy with this kind of level of trace for today. So we're going to bring back in the saucepan. Just give it a mix up to bring it back to life a little. So for an in the pot swirl, the idea is that you swirl one colour into the pot and then you simply pour it into the mould, and that'll give you a nice swirl design. Sometimes we just pour and let it kind of pour it all abstract and let it swirl as it pours. Sometimes we pour into sections and use the spatula to swirl it. Today I'm going to go for the abstract approach, I think, and you want to hold your jug nice and high up. We go for about 18 inches or so above the actual pan. You can't quite see that on my camera, I'm afraid, but I'm about 18 inches up, and all you do is tip the jug and then swirl all that batter down through the white. And if you can see it swirling it down through the white or the other portion of batter, then you know you're at a good consistency, and hopefully your swirl will work. And I think now I'm going to just take my spatula and just literally go 1, 2, 3, just to swirl it a little bit more. So that is what it looks like in the pan now. And now it's time to pull in our mould. So we are using the 2.5 pound mould. The recipe we are giving you will fill a 2.5 pound loaf mould, and we hold it relatively high so it swirls again as it goes into the mould, probably about 6 inches from the top of the mould, and we just swirl down. And this is the fun part. Just swirling it out of that pan and into the mould. Scraping down those last bits. Now you want to give your mould a shake from side to side to level the top, and a tap down to release any air bubbles that are trapped. And that there is your soap, and you could stop there and pop it to one side, set it away for 24 hours, come back to it and chop it up. We're actually going to show you how to texture the top and then decorate the top with some flower petals as well. So we are going to allow this probably 15 to 20 minutes to set up, because for texturing you need a nice consistency, a nice thick consistency to work with, and so it needs time to set up before you can start texturing. So if you're making this soap, give it a good 15-20 minutes, perfect amount of time to tidy up your soaping stuff, and then come back to it and we can texture the top then. So it's been about 15 minutes that we've been waiting for this soap to set up, and as you can see I have tested it now to check if it is firm enough. We are at a level where I am happy to texture, and today we are going to be using a fork. And again, this is a soap only fork. If you're using a fork for soaping, make sure it stays for soaping only. And the texturing today is going to be very similar to yesterday's texturing, but it is with a fork instead of a spoon. So we are going down into the soap and just pulling up to the centre with the fork, moving along and repeating, and you just want to work your way down your soap, just gently pulling up with the fork into the centre, and then you will turn your soap around. And obviously how you texture is completely down to personal preference. You could leave it like that if you wanted to. I am going to texture the other side as well, so fork down and in, pulling up to the centre, pulling up.
Use the fork.
I am using the fork. And as you can see, this is the same technique that we used with the spoon yesterday, but it is creating an entirely different design on top. So this is our texturing close up, and now what I said we were going to do is add some flowers, and I have chosen rose petals for our design today, and you can use rose petals if you wish to. If you don't want to use any flowers, don't use any flowers. If you want to use a different flower such as lavender or calendula, then by all means use a different flower. Do make sure they are properly dried. You don't want fresh flowers on top of your soap. They will go brown and horrible. You want properly dried flowers. A lot of people say that rose petals go brown on the top of soap. To be honest, our cerise coloured ones don't really seem to brown very badly. We used to use light pink rose petals and they did go brown, but we don't have problems with the cerise ones going brown. So if you're looking at putting rose petals on soap, from personal experience I would go with darker coloured petals. And you can scatter them however you want, but I am going to go just along the top of the soap. And because this is a beginner's soap, and because I'm going to presume you won't be selling, you don't need to weigh your rose petals, you can just pop them along the top. If you are selling your soaps, you would need to make sure that your rose petals were weighed and included in an assessment, which is what you need to be able to sell soap in the UK. You couldn't just scatter them on like this. You would have to weigh them and make sure you were putting the correct amount on. But because this is a soap for your own personal use, you don't need to weigh them, which makes it a lot easier. So once you've got the petals on to your liking, it is often a good idea to just work your way along the soap, just very gently pressing the petals into place. And the reason for doing this is so that they adhere nicely to the soap and don't just all fall off when it comes to time to cut it. So this is the soap that we have created today, and we want it to gel. And if you've watched our previous 2 soap making videos where we've shown you the beginner's soaps, you will have seen what we do to help the soaps to gel, but I'm going to show you again in case you haven't seen the previous 2 videos. We need our cardboard box, and then you pop your soap inside the cardboard box, you put it to bed, cover it up nice and snug, grab an old towel and insulate your cardboard box with a towel, and this helps the soap to get its heat up, get the temperature up, and it helps the soap to gel the full way through, so you don't end up with a partially gelled soap, which sometimes gives you a ring of darker colour in the centre and lighter colour around the outside. There is nothing wrong with, partial gel, it just is personal preference. I personally don't like how partial gel looks, but some people do. But we aim for full gel, and the way to do that is by insulating, keeping the temperature up. Every now and then I do uncover, I check the soap, and if it is starting to crack, I would remove the towel, because if it cracks, it shows that the temperature is uneven and it's warming up a little too much and it's causing the soap to crack. So if that were to happen, you would want to remove the insulation and move the soap to a cooler place. However, hopefully that won't happen in this instance, and we shall be back tomorrow chopping up our soap, and hopefully you guys will be doing the same along with us. So after you have left your soap to saponify for 24 to 48 hours, you can come back to it, and then you can uncover it and you can remove it from your little cardboard box. And I have shown you in our previous videos how we remove our soap from these loaf moulds, but I will show you again. We start by just gently prising the sides of the mould away from the soap. And this is the point where if we get any kind of sticking or strong resistance down the sides, we pop the soap back to one side and leave it to firm up for just a little while longer. And then we pull these edges here apart as well, so we have loosened the soap in the mould already. And then we go underneath the soap bar, so my fingers will be in the corners here and my thumbs are here, and I press upwards with my fingers, just pushing the soap up and out, and I press until I feel the soap pop away from the bottom of the mould, which it has done now. Then I turn around and repeat the process on the other side, and that has popped out straight away. And then we can just turn the soap over, gently apply pressure with my thumbs on the base of the mould, and the soap should pop out quite nicely, like that. And now for cutting this soap, we are going to cut it in a slightly different way. It has got botanicals on the top, so we don't want to be cutting top down because we shall be dragging them through the soap and potentially leaving drag marks. But we don't want to cut it upside down either, because the top has been layered, so it's not going to be flat. So we are going to cut on the side. So we are going to turn the soap onto the side for cutting today. And then I'm just going to use a ruler to mark it out into segments for cutting. We go with 1 inch thick. You can go with whatever size you wish to, and I just mark it with the knife where I want it to be cut. So we then line up our knife, and as I said, I can't cut straight, so this probably won't go straight. We chop downward. And then we slide off, remove the bar, and that is the swirl we have created. So you can see we have got the swirl of the pink and the white, and our swirl is quite blended, so it's blending into each other, and that is because we had a fairly light trace for in the pot swirl. Remember, I did say that you could actually thicken the trace and go a little bit thicker, and if you do that, your swirl will perhaps be slightly more pronounced. It won't blend quite as much as this one has. So it's down to personal preference, whether you want a swirl where the colours are blending slightly, or if you want a swirl where the colours are not blending. If you want colours that don't blend, go with a thicker trace, and if you want the colours to blend slightly, go with a thinner trace like we have here. And I'm just going to chop up the rest of the soap now, and we are cleaning the knife between uses with just an old tea towel. I just do it by just wiping it like so, and I just find that gives a cleaner cut when you are cutting the soap bars. So again, line it up, press down fairly firmly, and then pull the knife away. And there we have another bar of soap. So that is our third and final soap in our beginners mini series created. And I have to say, I think that the In the Pot swirl is my favourite one of all three soaps that we have created this week. I hope that you guys have been following this mini series and enjoying it. If you have been trying some of the soaps, then do leave us a comment and let us know how you got on. Obviously, as I mentioned in the two previous videos, these soaps will not be ready to use for 4 to 6 weeks. They need to be cured, put away on a shelf with good airflow so that they can lose the excess water, that can evaporate away, the crystalline structure of the soap can form, and they can turn into nice, hard, firm bars of soap. Unlike what they would be now, if we were to try and use them, they would turn to a soft, mushy, sad mess, really. So give them 4 to 6 weeks to cure and then enjoy them. Enjoy the fruits of your labour. Well, normally this is the point where I tell you what the video will be tomorrow, but that is our mini series complete. We have done 7 days of videos. I hope that they have been helpful to you. I hope you guys have learnt something from them. If you would like to see another mini series covering anything, you know, soap, bath, body related, then again, put your ideas in the description box, because we've enjoyed doing this mini series and we will happily do another one. So throw ideas at us for what you would like to see us turning into a mini series, and you never know, we may well create it. Thank you for watching. As always, please do give us a like if you enjoy the video, and do hit that subscribe button if you want to see more from us. We shall see you on Friday for our regular soap making video, and until then, enjoy the rest of your week, guys. Bye.
Bye.